I'd firstly like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that we meet on here tonight, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and pay our respects to our elders both past and present. Comrades, on behalf of wharfies working at DP World, the MUA National Negotiating Committee, we would like to express our sincerest and heartfelt gratitude to the Australian Union Movement, the left and progressive community, and to the many ITF and IDC affiliated union globally who have reached out with messages of support and solidarity during our struggle with DP World. Solidarity messages and support from across the world give us hope and courage, an inspiration to continue the fight against anti-worker and the anti-union agenda of DP World. We are fighting for all wharfies, dockers and longshore workers. We are opposing automation as a union busting tool, an issue that affects all dockers. We are fighting against DP World's proposal for our jobs to be outsourced to non-union companies while we are replaced by cheaper labour. We are fighting for the right to work and for our job security, to stop unnecessary redundancies and protect jobs through shorter hours and roster solutions suitable to the workforce. We oppose DP World, who aim to shed permanent job rosters. We are fighting for 10 days paid domestic violence leave in our agreement because company policies are arbitrary, can be changed and are not good enough to deal with a serious social issue. We fight to maintain our income protection insurance, which we have already paid for and won in the last agreement, but which DP World has threatened consistently since the start of these negotiations. We are fighting to stop company misuse and misinterpretations of our agreement and rights. Workers at DP World are overwhelmed by and will never forget the solidarity shown to us from workers all over the world. Our fight is not yet over with DP World, and we continue to stand up and resist the corporate agenda against dockers. We look forward to continuing our struggle with your support and solidarity, and we commit to the workers of Australia and the world who have stood up for us. We will always be there in solidarity with you all. Comrade Willie, we extend our special thanks to you and the ILWU for being here in person tonight representing your union. The ILWU are our greatest friends and fraternal comrades, and we are bound in struggle and will always be there for you and your union. Our unity is our strength. Long live working class and international solidarity.
And Naomi's right. It gives you the strength, the courage and the conviction to continue the struggle, knowing that we're not alone fighting these giant corporations, but we've got workers of the world behind us who are prepared to stand up. Now, international solidarity is the key and the lifeblood to working class struggle, and it has been for a long time. And our two speakers tonight are probably some of the best placed in the world to talk about solidarity, to talk about struggle, to talk about the waterfront. And first of all, we have Paddy Crumlin, National Secretary of the MUA, and obviously the President of the ITF, and also the Chair of the Dockers section, uniquely placed to get a view of the struggles of dock workers the world over. And of course, wonderful Willie Adams, who's travelled here in solidarity with us at DP World, but also workers at Hutchison's who are also in struggle against the same agenda of corporate union busting, automation and outsourcing. Willie's the international president of the ILWU, a union who we are just historically bound to and always will be. Their blues have always been ours and ours theirs, and we go back over 20 years and we see the amazing activity, the amazing actions and militancy of the ILWU in turning around the Columbus, Canada during the Patrick dispute, and so many other examples of every time we've been in a blue, they've been there with us. And this is another example where Willie's flown out straight away, basically to come out in solidarity. He'll be out at the terminal tomorrow. We'll be talking to the workforce during the smoko outside because they won't let us in, and then there'll be a press conference, again to push the issue and to keep the pressure on DP World that we're not going to go away. We're going to stand up, we're going to keep fighting, and we're going to keep fighting, especially when we've got wonderful comrades like Willie and workers of the world standing up in solidarity with us.
We just had a strike up in Alaska. We had 400 workers up there of the ILWU, ferry workers. And the Sydney branch, you sent a letter of solidarity and you made a video. Thank you so much. We got a contract On behalf of Marina Sakatano, President of the IBU, Terry Mass, Secretary Treasurer, we thank you. And I think we have a kinship. I have been coming out here for 16 years, and I'll just tell you what it is for me. I wasn't on the payroll. I came out here not only as the president, but as a rank and filer. And I paid my own way to come out. I wasn't on the union dime. It was important for me to come out here for this struggle, for the brothers and sisters from DP World of the MUA, because as dockers and seafarers, we're struggling all over the world. And so many times, I don't care how many speeches you give, and I was growing up, I was never afraid of a guy that told me he was going to beat me up or was screaming and hollering. I was always worried about the quiet guy that just walked up and popped me in the mouth. And to me, sometimes we talk too much. It's about action. Let your words speak for itself. And so I needed to be down here on this holy ground where this struggle was taking place, and I wanted the brothers and sisters of the MUA, especially DP World, to know that the ILWU's commitment is to you. We stand with you. We support you, and we will die with you. That's how important it is to us.
So Paddy, as ITF President and MUA National Secretary, I mean, our union's embraced internationalism, and largely you've driven that. How important is international solidarity to improving the lives of workers, the power of their unions, and tackling the challenges that we face?
Well, I haven't driven it so much that it's the history of the trade union movement and the progressive movement that's driven it. The unionism was really formed in the industrial world around supply chains, and seafarers, been beyond the reach of national regulation, and by extension waterside workers, dockers, in the delivery of cargo that has always been essential to the world economy, had been targeted by industrial forces as an impediment to wealth creation and that type of industrial elitism. So it wasn't me so much. It was, when you look at the history of the ILWU, and we're not here to do that, but it's also a cyclical process where, you know, guys like Harry Bridges, Australian seafarer, was part of a mobilisation of international workers from developed countries that is the equivalent of third world seafarers. Now, seafarers had no dignity and no rights. Harry jumped ship, Melbourne seafarer jumped ship in San Francisco, I think in 1918. And together with other people got together and said, we can do something about this. This is the biggest economy in the world, the US. And, you know, let's get out there and let's create an opportunity for working men and women. And the history that went on from that, the formation of the hiring hall, which was uniquely the ILWU's. That's why those people were killed in San Francisco in the 30s. They formed a hiring hall so that there would be some control over the supply of labour as a foundation for dignity and long-term employment and consolidation of workers' rights. That sort of leadership flowed on to international leadership with guys like Jim Healy and Elliott v. Elliott. There were many in the National Union of Seafarers and in the UK and throughout Europe. So the leadership, the international leadership, came from an acknowledgement that we're in an international industry, and the only way to effectively combat that type of leverage and pressure on the employer's side was to be involved with each other, connected with each other, and determined with each other to make a difference. So we're the sort of the latest generation of that. It's more sophisticated industry. It's not the same mortality rate, even though death and injury remains a serial problem in the industry, particularly in terminals where there should be no accidents. You know, they're a pretty controlled environment. And we're now in a position where world trade and the world economy is so giant and so elitist, and the world's so dysfunctional, and national economies and regulatory bodies and governments so unempowered to do anything about greed and exploitation, that we've been targeted as a workforce to remove forcibly because we're an impediment to an elitist and opportunistic grab for more power and more wealth. And at the end of the day, we know the world's very dysfunctional from an environmental point of view, from an economic point of view, from a political point of view. It is a dysfunctional world. And partly what's happening is we're getting targeted because we have a degree of functionality, we have a proven capability to do something about it, and that our feet are anchored in the needs of working men and women. And one of the great things about this campaign is that it demonstrates that dockers all over the world, men and women, and their families relate to what's going on here in Sydney. That's never been seen before, to have Spanish and Argentinian and Canadian, French, dock workers in the UK, DP World dock workers, where we're organising inside an enterprise and doing it with a degree of leadership and being able to overcome divisions and political divisions and do it in the interests of workers. It's a demonstrative fact that what we're doing here is absolutely essential, not only to the future of dock workers in DP World, not only the future of dock workers and workers in the maritime industry, but in the health of the sort of world we want to live in and to have access to in terms of our collectivism and our demands to be recognised for our needs. And again, this is why I'm proud to take over from Charlie and Jimmy's here, Jimmy Donovan's here, the very many great people. When you think about Tom Nelson, the people that had Elliott v. Elliott, Pat Garrity in this country, that we're still defining how we can act internationally, do it in a way that develops local needs and are able to inspire other workers that there is hope in a world that's dysfunctional and leaving working men and women and their families behind. So if it wasn't for Willie, he's always been a catalyst who took on the leadership reluctantly, identified that you need to get out there and do something, and his determination, this person, the president of they say probably, Willie would say definitely, the most powerful longshoreman union in the world, and together with the ILA, dominant unions in North America. And we think about Trump and all of the problems being calculated and expanded from an industrial and political view, to have people like this reaching out to us is demonstrative of not only past leadership but also current importance.
Yeah, it's amazing, Willie. And your union, the ILWU, on that point, has just signed a historic solidarity pact with the ILA. Could you tell us more about that pact and what it means for your union and for dockers around the world?
Okay, this is going to be a very, very painful conversation, but I'll be very honest. We didn't sign an agreement with them. We had not been to an ILA convention since 2011, and things had not been really well between the ILWU and the ILA. And I thought about it for a long time with my officers, and we decided that we needed to go in a different direction to move the union forward. And my thought was, when you're driving a car, do you look at the rearview mirror or do you look at the windshield in front of you? And it's about the future. And I will tell you, the younger generation who I represent, who's now taken over in my union, they don't care about the past. They want to know where we're going. And so we went 14 deep. Normally when we went to an ILA convention, it would just be the officers. But we took rank and filers. We had a sister with us. We had diversity. And we wanted to reflect the new ILWU. We were very, very happy to showcase that. Now, once again, a lot of things were said. Actions, to me, will speak louder than words. But sometimes you got to have these painful conversations. Sometimes there's too much pride and too much ego, and sometimes we got to pull our big boy pants up and our big girls pants up, and we got to do what's best for our members and what's come along. Because officers, to me, we're like the wind, just passing through, and then we leave. And I think for the future of the ILA and the ILW, it's a younger membership, and they're coming. And there's going to be that diversity. And they have a different view of the world. And a lot of times we get stuck in the past. So I'm hoping this is the start. Jordy was there from IDC. I think we had some conversations. And, you know, I was with Jimmy Donovan in the 90s in Liverpool, England. And a lot of this history started with the Liverpool dock workers, and things have come full circle. And so if we're going to be visionaries and we're going to look at the future, we got to let the past go. We got to move on, because I'll just speak for me. I can't speak for Paddy. The reason me and my officers went to Florida is because of my membership. I represent them, and they're the boss. And they expect more, and they expect me to get over certain issues and not get caught up with little insecurities, or if I got my feelings hurt, I need to move forward, because it's about the whole, not Willie Adams. I am just the mouthpiece, but the membership is the power and the rank and file, and I work at their direction.
So, Paddy, on that, as ITF Dockers Chair, how important do you see as looking through the windscreen mirror, going forward and building that unity? How important is that in building unity across internationally Dockers?
Well, it's ironic, really. I'm the chair, Willie's the deputy chair, and Nick Stam, who we know very well, is the other chair. So there's been a transformation from the Liverpool Dockers with inside the dock workers movement, where there has been a realisation of the failures that led on to Liverpool, subsequently led on to Patrick's. So two things are organically connected. If you fail in internationalism, you're only as good as your last win or defeat. That's reality. And that's one of the reasons we have, when we commit to a campaign, we have to deliver an outcome. And of course that flowed onto the ILWU lockout in the early 2000s. And subsequently that's moved on to union busting through automation and the continuing outsourcing of work through contract work and the other areas. So we've been under the hammer for a very long period of time. So what you've seen is a transformation within inside the ITF that basically identified a weakness in internationalism at a time that was critical for dock workers and by extension seafarers. If you haven't got a strong dock workers movement, you can't look after the interests of seafarers in the supply chain of world trade. It's impossible. It's predicated, their ability to live dignified and decent lives is predicated upon having the strength of workers under national regulation, having the capacity to prosecute campaigns in their interests, in the seafarers' interests. And dock workers were penalised for that effectiveness. In a way, the world is so dysfunctional. You don't get a Donald Trump or a Morrison or a Johnson. You don't get a complete failure of governance. You don't get the absurd, denial of false news and fake news. You don't get the manipulation of media. You don't get the ability of China and Russia, to get in there and change whole software systems in a way that can distort information, unless the world is basically dysfunctional. What reason we're under so much pressure is because we're functional. And when we get together like this in DP World as a sovereign wealth trust in United Arab Emirates, hardly a democracy, trade unions are illegal, there's no real democratic. I'm not here to embarrass the UAE because they'll be watching, of course they will, but it is, like many Middle Eastern countries and other countries, dysfunctional. The reason that we're under such attack is because we're representative of a new type of functionality. So internationalism is very important. It's hard to go back to dock workers and seafarers and say, they really care about you at DP World at Mumbai. Here they are. Here's a demonstrative. So there's a cynicism and an isolation. What the employer does, and largely, we're living in a world that disassociates collective work and collective effort. And, I want to acknowledge the traditional owner of the land. There's no better demonstration. And it's just not an industrial issue or a trade union issue. It's a social issue. It's about peeling off the working class in whatever the way. It's about denying the rights of unemployed, like somehow they're responsible for it. It's about people that can't be looked after in old age, treated with a complete lack of dignity and submerged, away from any light that can improve their position. It is the failure of institutions. And part of what we're doing here, by extension, is demonstrating our ability to work, communicate, and activate ourselves internationally. It's hard. It's hard to overcome Cold War and philosophical and personality difficulties. No one knows that better than Will and I. The ILWU was formed out of a split from the ILA in the 50s. And now, as you heard from Will, we're in the process of collaborating and moving on to a much larger and picking up the failures of the Liverpool Dockers and making the ITF more accountable, and being able to create a connection between the workers and the ability to demonstrate real action. That's why DP World are worried. Like WTF, what are they doing to go out and challenge a workforce, a new management system that has delivered the capacity and the productivity and the stability over from P&O back in the Richard Setchell days, in all the transformations, and treats their workforce like they're stupid and with a lack of regard, take away their social, they haven't got any sense of responsibility to violence at home, to someone who gets injured away from the job, just use whatever opportunity to remove any sense of social responsibility, and to do that, and then put themselves out there like they're some sort of corporate responsible entity, and that we are being vilified because we're protecting ourselves in the only way we know possible, which is through our collectivism, our diversity, and our humanity. And if you can't do it in the workplace where we're so strong, how the hell are we going to represent reconciliation and justice here in Australia for the marginalised people that own this country, that have kept it safe for tens of thousands of years and deserve recognition and a voice? So this is not just a failure of industrial and elitist corporate rights. This is a systemic failure of people addressing the real needs of the society and the people that work in it. And that's why they worry about us, and they want to worry about us, because the ITF and the IDC and everybody, we're learning, we're just as committed as we ever were to building a better life, more decent jobs, secure retirement incomes, decency and respect. And we're prepared to fight for it. That's the thing that shits them the most, if I can say that, because they don't like anyone fighting them. And they have an arrogance and a hubris, that makes them in denial. Well, good luck with that one.
So, Willie, on DP World's attacks, they're in many respects outsourcing in questions like automation are some of the major attacks that this company are bringing to the fore. Now, they're issues, I think, that affect all dock workers. Have you got any views on the relevance of outsourcing and automation to longshoremen in the US and the dockers movement internationally?
I think that's why dockers, I don't care whether it's the MUA, ILWU, MUNS, IDC, ITF, we need to have these painful conversations. We need to sit down, get a bottle of whiskey, put it in the middle of the room, and we need to talk about, because all dockers are being affected by automation and technology. I live in the technology capital of the world, San Francisco, California. And automation and technology, I see it every day. You take Uber. I've been to their headquarters. They're one of our tenants in the port. I have been in a manless, driverless car for 3 miles. The future is coming. And the city of San Francisco is about ready to introduce some legislation that says any worker that's replaced by automation, robots, and technology, this money will go to a fund to train them for jobs of the future. And we need to talk about the future of work. Anything that makes us feel uncomfortable, we need to have those painful conversations. Because at one time, we were 100,000 longshoremen on the West Coast. We're 15,000 today. What is the future going to look like? Either we steer the conversation and the narrative, and if we let the employer direct, then we'll get the crumbs. We have to take the lead. We have to tell them, we're going to take you into the future. But also, we got to tell our members who's so used to doing just different type of jobs, they got to want to be trained for the new jobs of the future. And we've got to get past that apathy. And you want to talk about that, the problem that I have with all the Democratic candidates that are running for president. Nobody's talking about automation and technology. You think we got a homeless problem in America now? You wait till half of America is homeless. And there's civil unrest in the streets. A man will die and go to jail to put food on the table for his wife and kids. A woman will die for her little kids to have food on the table. And we have to talk about this, and where is the future going to go in automation and technology? We aren't going to be stopping. I had a buddy last month that had open heart surgery. 2 robots did that surgery. If we think that it's going to go away, it's not going to go away. What are the new jobs? How are we going to frame it? But dockers, we've got to become united. We're not united. We have fractions and bad conversations among ourselves. And like I said, going back with Jimmy Donovan, the ITF let the Liverpool dock workers down, but also their union let them down. But you know what? We learned from that, because guess what? When you had the Patrick's dispute, everybody came together. We won. We got locked out. If we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes that we made. And I look at the younger generation, they have got the skills and tools. I mean, when I get a phone, I look at it, I don't know what to do. A 3-year-old can pick up that phone and play all kind of games. And the younger generation is going to be, I believe, the generation that takes dockers into the next future of technology, automation, and they'll get their heads around it. And we have to embrace them, and we have to educate them, and we have to empower them. And even the old timers, we need to know when to leave, because the younger generation has got to be able to run with it, with that passion. Because I can say about Paddy, when Paddy became president, Paddy opened up the ITF. I've never known any other leader that was bringing delegations of young people and other members all over the world. And Paddy brought the world to dockers and the seafarers here in the MUA. And that's what it takes. We got to have a broader view of the world as we take this on. We can't be afraid of it. We cannot fear automation and technology. We got to deal with this. Why do you think we've been around so long? Because we've been fearless. We've been smart. And we have the aptitude to do that. And we need to show the employers the way. And as my grandmother's always said, if you ain't leading, you're just walking. And we need to be leading.
So, Paddy, these are issues that don't just affect dockers. And as the ITF president, is there a broader discussion across other sections? Because obviously rail, transport, road transport, seriously affected by automation. Is there any discussions or capacity to bring those struggles together around the effects?
Well, firstly, when I pick up my phone, I figure there's someone listening to me and not with my best interests at heart. So, yeah, sure, but it's hard. You have a democratic movement, the labour movement, you're going to have personality differences, regional and cultural differences, political differences, and when you segregate that into the supply chain, road and rail, aviation, because they're all integral to each other, dock workers, urban transport, they're all connected, and increasingly they're connected by the same corporate interests. It is the big employers, Amazon and the big employers that are controlling the supply chain, driving down the costs and union busting. So all automation is developing productivity in a way that complements human development. See, this is, I guess, an issue of policy differentiation. If we had politicians that would have the guts to get out there and say, we will support automation where it supports social development and improvement, they would be very, very popular. But they don't. They get out there with a lie. That is, it is wharfies stopping automation and we're Luddites. When the reality was, as Willie said, we know in this country, containerisation saw a massive decrease. That was a type of technology. All the new cranes and machinery that came on subsequently. The difference was it was negotiated. The existing workforce was given options. It was a social development as well as an industrial development. The union wasn't targeted, and if it was, it fought back. And it fought back internationally, because all of this technology is an international phenomenon. It's not a national phenomenon, and that's what's happening now. And we were able to have unified outcomes. For example, in the ILWU, they maintain the trailers. The trailers. They have their maintenance agreement that is extended far wider than it is here in Australia. They've got a hiring hall so that you can meet the peaks and the troughs of the need to move labour. A lot of the problems we're having with DP World is that meeting the peaks and the troughs, and this isn't the same in other workforces, in other industries, is to make people casual and make them precarious and not give them any certainty. That does two things. They have, the Deliveroo type approach, or the, the Uber approach, to just a fragmented digital workforce that they ring you up and they come in and out. And the other thing is there's no accountability to be able to look after those workers that are delivering the means of production, that are delivering it. And if it happens in the docks, how much easier is it to do it in the intermodal industry and down rail and down road? And by extension into urban transport, moving workers to jobs backwards and forwards, and into aviation. So of course it's happening. But there's different answers and different challenges in each of the areas, and that's what we have to understand about internationalism. It's got to be done in a way that is strategic, that understands, let's face it, it's about class. We're in a world now that is seeking to deny the majority of people their rights as defined in United Nations, ILO, and any human rights covenants. And now we're back, the latest breakthrough is legislation to stop slavery, because there is real slavery going on for women. There is real slavery going on from children. We have been so failed at our responsibilities to be able to build productivity and automation into functional communities, communities that nurture and develop, educate, house, and let people, and there is such a chronic failure that the alternative is to attack anybody that criticises it. And of course, to be able to counter that power, because there's never been power like it, where 45 people have the same wealth of 3.5 billion individuals. That's the nature of the world. Capitalism has never been so polarised. The elites, the Murdochs of the world, and have never had more power to control the media, the propaganda, the governments, the piss-weak governments that come and go. But they haven't got the power to control us. And their frustration, and this is one of the most demonstrable thing about international organisation, whether it's DP World or it's in the fight, to have decent public transport. It's the ability for workers and existing workers to negotiate long-term outcomes for themselves, to create new jobs, to be able to demonstrate whether it's done because it's union busting. We know that when they automate a dock, then the crane rate goes down. It is fake news that they are automating to create productivity that's going to increase the wealth of our society. That is a lie. And it is a falsehood bought into by governments and, unfortunately, in this case, by people like DP World that should know better. And if they can't engage with their workforce, and we can't, if they won't do it through a sense of moral regard through a sense of their responsibility and corporate and shareholder responsibility, then we'll make them do it. And we can't do it just down at Botany or in Melbourne or up there in Fremantle, over there in Fremantle, or up in Brisbane. We've got to do it out there on the job. And when DP World accept their responsibility to the workforce, then we move on to Hutchinson. Then we move on to the other terminal operators. Then we move down the supply chain because they're controlling it. And as far as we're concerned, if they control it, they should be doing that, using that control in a way that develops the interests of their workers and their employees and doesn't undermine it. That's the importance of international organisation.
So, Willie, we've seen that the effects, as Paddy's just gone through, the effects on the community in terms of automation and questions like outsourcing. In your union's recent struggle with APM, it appeared a considerable mobilisation within the community and on the streets. How important is that in mobilising the community behind our struggles and in defeating this broad anti-worker agenda?
Well, the union is nothing without the community. If they lose these jobs, then there's less money for the businesses, real estate. It just affects the economy, affects the community. And our beloved community is what's important. That's the thriver. That's what makes it go. And you don't want LA to turn into like Flint, Michigan, where they got bad water and stuff like that. So when a company like APM comes in, the largest company in the world, MERS, they don't care. They don't care about the community. They don't care about workers. And as Paddy says, it's not about production. They're going to have less production with automation. It's about eliminating labor. We are the one force that stands in the way of complete dominance for companies all over the world because we are the best labor force on this planet. And then in the community, look, the billions of dollars that our members spend into the community for small businesses, whether it's pizza, Little League baseball, and just everything that affects the community, right? It's important. And then when you got the G5, the stuff that it can affect the community, and then it's enough with the bad air and things like that in the ports. There's a high rate of women getting breast cancer, kids having asthma. And so these companies, they don't care. They just answer to their shareholders, right? And we're not shareholders. What we have to offer is our labor. So it was a very, very proud moment for the brothers and sisters in the community in LA to stand tall and to speak up and to speak their voice and to support the union. And also saying to a company, you have a social responsibility when you come in. But these companies come in, they don't want a partnership. They want to treat you as a slave. They're telling you, this is what we're going to do. They don't ask for any input. It's like a relationship. If you have a partnership with the employer, a relationship is when somebody dictates to you. A partnership is equal. And that wasn't there. And they did not embrace the community, APM. They didn't come in. They just said, this is what we're doing. And it's basically at the end of the day is going to eliminate labor. We're going to make more money off the backs of working people. The more people that work, more people can buy houses, more people can spend money in the local businesses and stuff like that. That's what keeps the economy thriving. The lifeblood of the economy goes through our ports. And it's our members that put that money back into the community. And that's, I just think for us, what we saw was that APM just said, well, we don't care. This is how it's going to be. And then it turns into a city like Flint, Michigan. And then the cost of living, everything just goes down. And we don't maintain a level of a city and a town that the working class represents. It's just a bunch of yuppies, not working class people.
You know what shits me most about DP World? That we've nursed them from P&O ports all the way through, we kept them separate from the Patrick issues, we negotiated outcomes, then DP World came in, We nursed them through that. There's been management change after management change after management change. We nursed them through the GFC. You know, if they had a problem with rosters or changes to the shipping windows, we negotiated that, and we have delivered a long-term relationship. We've got workers here tonight that have worked there for 30, 35, 40 years, that believe in the company, believe they were doing the right thing, but were still unionists, that were productive, hard workers, you know. And the thing that shits me the most when someone like DP World decides, okay, a manager out of Malaysia was a junior manager, which he was back in the day with a sexual day, you know, another guy who's been in and out, so they have a major management change, and that the whole relationship is gone. The very first thing they did was remove a protection for workers to have salary maintenance away from the job. So they walk in and they put a gun to your head and say, we're the new management, and if you don't do everything we want you to do, we're going to start undermining your family life and your personal life. The arrogance of it. The arrogance of it, that these people have been here for 5 seconds and that they've got to convince us that we're going to go into an EBA where they're not going to use their clauses on continuous improvement to erode permanency, to undermine the rosters. Straight away, the stupidity and arrogance of it, straight away demonstrated. And I hope you listen to this, Andrew, and I hope you listen to this, Mr. Hilton. That type of arrogance is not going to wash in our workplaces, whether it's DP World, anywhere in the world, or any other terminal operators. And you need to understand whether you're working with us or you're working against us.
Really good.
And I hope you get what I'm going to say. I want to thank DP World. You know what? They did us a favor. They united us. I'm here because of DP World. And people from all over the world, brothers and sisters, have weighed in on your struggle. We need struggle as working class people to grow. Because sometimes we get a lot of apathy. We get complacent. And sometimes we can't bring ourselves together. DP World has brought us together. We ought to thank DP World. If you're listening, thank you so much for bringing dockers together all over the world. You did something for us we ourselves couldn't do. And I think that that's important. I think that that's important. And I wish we had a blue at least once or twice a year. We need that. Because, you know, a fighter, if he fights to stay in shape, he fights every 3 months. But if you only fight every 2 or 3 or 4 years, you become fat, you become apathetic, and you don't train. But when you're constantly under the gun, you're going to be hungry. And if you think about how the MUA and the ILWU, the law of physics will tell you it's harder for any union to be better than the MUA and the ILW. The law of physics prohibits it. But you know what happened? It was those old timers, and they fought and they struggled. We don't have enough struggles. We're too complacent. We kind of walk around, we got a little attitude, and we kind of think we got it made. Well, tell you what, these companies have put us on notice. They are bringing the fight to our doorstep, and they're going, what are you going to do about it? And they're going to see if we still have the militancy, if we have the guts, and if we have the intelligence to fight them. And I will tell you, yes, this is good. This is good because we're going to win, but we need to struggle. We need this. We will be stronger union brothers and sisters. We need to be reminded, we're just workers. We are from the working class, not middle class. We are workers and we're working class. Our parents were from the working class. Our grandparents were from the working class. And those that came before us and gave their blood and died and shed, how dare we disappoint them or they not be proud of our efforts? We need to be here. Thank you.
So, just in finalising, comrades, could you each give a message to rank and file wharfies out there in struggle with DP World, and in fact struggle all over the world, and a message to them about the importance and how the Dockers movement can actively get behind their struggles and how that they've got to have to fight to win?
Well, we've never been better organised. It is about, we are the shareholders, and increasingly we're using our pension funds to make sure that there isn't union busting. It's one of the initiatives that we're involved in, workers' capital, deferred wages, not investing in companies that are out there busting unions to take a shortcut on profits, because that doesn't develop profits, that undermines the communities and the societies which ultimately are consuming and making sure that there is a total functional economic equation. So the first thing is, we're not going away. The international dock workers movement's never been stronger. We're talking to Dubai ports about organising Emirates, for example, in aviation, and we've done the same with Qatar. We are determined across the world to make sure that workers, regardless of their geography, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their gender, have the right and the same. It's not necessarily an economic equation. There's a different quality of life in India than there is in Australia, but some things aren't negotiable. You can't contract out. You can't union bust. You can't use an opportunity where your occupational health and safety is smothering mortality rates and smothering responsibility to your workforce. There are fundamentals that we will fight as an international movement to prosecute the case and win. And we're backed up in a world that's increasingly identifying corporations for their lack of responsibility, their lack of environmental, social and governance responsibility. We're getting stronger. We represent the majority of working men and women and the majority of humanity. And we're not just in unions. They're people on the receiving end of an economic and a political elitism and polarisation where they have no out other than to join together in a functional way and prosecute their case. So yeah, they've got to make up their mind, DP World. They want to be part of a process of engagement and the creation of better societies across the world, better workplaces, safer workplaces, loyalty and decency. Or do they want to be part of something, another shortcut, another cyclical management, another round of arrogance and hubris, another cynical attitude to fill their own pockets, personal opportunism, corporate opportunism and greed, smothering, and make their mind up? Because we're not going away. We're going to continue to articulate the case as demonstrated around the world by DP workers. I've been to virtually every DP World terminal, APM terminal, increasingly Hutchinson terminal, Port of Singapore Authority terminal, together with the IDC. This is not about a Cold War approach or a personal approach. This is about people that have reshaped the world, dock workers, that have, for their own hard work, developed decency in all of these countries, 35-hour week. We were, pension funds, old age, protections, workers' compensations, hiring hall, stability of employment. Most of those things started in the docks because people determined to use their leverage to face down the greed and elitism they've been confronted with over generations. That hasn't changed. We haven't changed. DP World and the rest of the terminal operators need to make their mind up whether they're on board or they're off board.
And Willie, what's your message to the MUA rank and file members in struggle?
I think that that's why I'm here. Action speaks louder than words. And as much as I love Paddy and a lot of my mates out there, Jimmy Donovan and Bobby, I came here to see the workers of DP World. That's why I'm here, to support them and stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters, because I'm a worker too. And I know that feeling. I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what it's like to struggle. But you need to know, and to you, you're not alone. My union, the ILWU, and Dockers all over the world stand behind you. Stand strong, stand tall, be militant, be unapologetic. As I tell you, you will always be here. When most of those managers are gone, you will still be here. The MUA, you have a history of fighting and leading from the front. And when you leave, you should ask, what will people remember you by? Your kids, your grandkids? You can say you were part of the most militant and the proudest union in Australia, the fighting men and women of the Maritime Union of Australia. That should be enough to be on your headstone when you leave. And I tell you what, for me, I couldn't be prouder. Once again, I thank them because we will be here. And if it continues, we will have to escalate it. We'll ratchet this thing up if we have to. But you have support all over the world. Please do not think that you're alone. And if I have to come back, I'll bring my officers, I'll bring my members, and we'll stand on the line with you, and we will go toe-to-toe with them, and we will take the fight to their doorstep. Thank you.